Welcome back, everyone. And we, with Sandra, are now going to introduce our next speaker, who is very dear to us both. I'm not sure if you want to say anything about our next speakers, Sandra.
Yes, so the speaker is Gui Perdrix, our dear director. Is gonna talk about a topic that is very important for him. I met Guy a few months ago. He brought me into this coliv adventure and into the coliving. And thanks to him, I discovered a really great industry full of like passionate, interesting people. But especially I got to know Guy, who is who's been very inspiring to me. And his true talent is actually to connect people. And I would say that is a great community builder. So that's the topic he's going to present now. Matt, would you like to add something?
Yeah, I just wanted to share. So I met Guy a few years ago. I was introduced by our co-founder, Ryan Fix, one of the sort of fairy godmothers of co-living, godfathers, let's say. And he told me right away, you guys are going to connect right away, and it's going to be an amazing friendship, and that's what it has been since the start. And yeah, Guy, as Sandra said, has a very strong ability to connect people, to inspire people, and he's really done that over the last few years with Co-Liv, and he has really helped Co-Liv catalyze its organization to new levels. So he's going to be talking about the art of community building, which stems from his world tour, visiting over 50 co-living communities around the world and speaking with over 150 co-living spaces and entrepreneurs. And these are his invaluable insights that he's going to bring to us all. So thank you, Guy, not only for this session, but also for everything you've done for Co-Liv.
Let's raise our hands for Guy.
Thank you so much, you two. That is very dear. Hello and welcome again. And this time, let me take a different hat, which is I'm going to be sharing with you not only as Guy, the director of Co-Liv, but also as Guy, the founder of Art of Co, and Guy as a person. And for that, I wanted to just get a bit personal for the first couple of minutes before I share my learnings from 4 years now of co-living and of working with co-living operators and of writing on co-living around how to build community. And so welcome then to this talk entitled The Art of Community Building. And I want to start like a few years back, which as you will be able to see on your screen right now. That was 5 years back. I was living in Paris. I was at a time working in the tech startup scene. I co-founded like a startup / co-working space for social impact startups and NGOs. And then what happened, boom, I had a breakdown. I call this like the quarter life crisis. And I decided to change my life radically. One of the things I did was sell off my belongings and become a nomad. The other things I did was that I started living in community. And in fact, everywhere where I would go, I would open pop-up co-living spaces. So it would be around 5 to 20 people living together, usually around like a common theme. And my theme at that time was lifestyle engineering. So it was called a lifestyle engineering house. And we're a bunch of young kids, actually not too young, between 25 and 45. But young kids trying to get the best out of our lives and live together. And you can see a bunch of pictures of us like going on hikes, hosting workshops, and just having one of the best times of our lives. And what I then decided to do was to explore that topic more in depth because I realized the transformational power that co-living can have, which led me onto this journey of visiting 100 different co-living spaces, interviewing 200 actors, traveling around the world, hosting meetups with co-liv in 30 different cities, some of them that you can see right now on the screen. And that led me to writing a book called The Art of Co-Living, which still hasn't been published, which is going to be published just after the summit, because in the meanwhile, I procrastinated and wrote another book with Matt Lesniak called The Community Facilitation Handbook, and also co-founded Co-Living Insights 2 years back, which now turned into Co-Living Awards, and also, of course, joined Co-Liv and created things like the Co-Liv Summit. So that's just about my background, but what I also really started doing was speaking and also especially consulting around the art of community building. And And my goal for you today is to understand what community means and how you can create it within your co-living spaces. And that comes from my learning of interviewing people, but also of living and organizing co-living spaces myself. In fact, in the last 4 years, I've only lived 2 weeks by myself. So it kind of gives you an idea of how much I'm co-living. We're actually co-living even right now here in Paris. So first things first, what is community? I want to show you those 2 little images here, where you have on the right side, you have a narrow definition, which is people saying community is when people live together. But literally, people do their own thing. The other definition, and that's my personal one, is that community means it's an emotional connection between people. It is people actually being engaged, thinking about each other, and having a common identity. And once they have this, then they're actually going to also co-create that community and take care of each other. So how do you create this, right? The one thing, if there's one thing that I would love you to take away from today, is what I call my magic formula, which is community equals alignment minus difference. And I will come back to that later on, but it really is about how can you create a maximum of alignment between people, alignment between their interests and their needs and their visions and their behaviors, while avoiding differences or implementing methods to overcome these differences, right? Because it is normal that we have differences as human beings, but it's usually here that it explodes in co-living scenarios. So how do we do that? There's 3 things that I want to give with you today. And the first thing is that you need to understand what I call the UCX stages. UCX means user community experience. And it really starts at understanding from the discovery and curation phase. Discovery, for example, means people will go and find you through Google Ads or however you promote your co-living space. What do they read at this point? For example, if you do set expectations that are too high, for example, you promise, we have this amazing community, but put a bunch of people into your spaces on Instagram, and then they actually come, and in the day-to-day, they don't have these people there engaged, then you're setting a wrong promise. It also goes to understanding a very crucial phase that a lot of co-living operators unfortunately still forget, which is onboarding. Onboarding is super crucial. Onboarding is the phase just before you arrive until like the first weeks after you arrive, where you as an operator, your role is to educate residents and to integrate them within the community. So you got to be proactive about that. You need to, for example, or you can create systems that allow other members, new members to meet old ones, to have mentorship and buddy systems, to host welcoming events for new members, right? And then also explaining the member how that person can get involved in the community, which then turns into the communal life. And communal life really is the time that the co-living resident is going to live at the space. And during the communal life phase, one of the key takeaways, especially from the community facilitation handbook, is that community cannot be managed, it can only be facilitated. And your role as an operator is to help people actualize their needs. I'll give you a concrete example. One approach is to say, hey, we're going to host this and this and this events that day, and that is it. And people know they attend, they'll go back. They won't be involved. They won't be responsibilized for anything, setting up, going back down. The other approach is that you spend personal time with each of your members at the beginning and ask them, how can this place and the people serve you? And what type of events would you like to create? And this way you empower a member to take over the experience that they want to create and give them ownership about it. So that is one thing. The other thing that I want to also share with you is that is what I just talked about, which is moving from a top-down to a bottom-up approach. So let me restate this. I think there's like 3 main approaches right now in co-living. The first one is the do-it-yourself approach. What does it mean? It means that if I'm a new resident, I'm going to come to your space. You're going to give me the keys. You're going to say, enjoy, see you in 6 months when you leave. That's it. And I'm going to have to figure that stuff out. It kind of works, but it is not the places where people stay longest. It is not the places where people are engaged the most, and it's not the places that have the highest NPS scores, very simply because it is hard to create community if people are not engaged and if you don't create the right systems to do so. The second approach is the top-down management. Top-down management is that you as an operator decide what's going to happen for the residents. But the third approach is the bottom-up facilitation. Here, your role is not to decide on the agenda. It is to ask residents what their agenda is and help them to actualize it. Give them the tools, the communication tools, maybe a house budget, that you give them like even the rights, that you tell them you can shape this place as long as, of course, it abides to our values. And from all of the communities that I've visited, only the ones in which members can be actively involved are the ones that strive and survive. And lastly, I'd love to share with you a few of the best practices that I've applied and that I'm also recommending to any type of co-living space. And that is, we're coming back to the first equation, which is community equals alignment minus difference. And so the first goal, as you can see on the left side of the screen, is that you need to overcome or help residents overcome their differences. For example, it's very important to overcome the so-called tragedy of the commons. Tragedy of the commons is people leaving their dishes in the sink, the floor getting dirty. So for here, you need to create systems, for example, like symbols within the space that signalize that you can't leave your dishes in the sink. You need to onboard people on these rules beforehand. You can create, for example, house leaders or house managers that actually look after that. You can also have very clear guidelines, such as in the common areas, you don't leave stuff hanging around. If not, it does get messy. Which also means that you need to think about to create storage space within a common area so that people can put their stuff in there, right? So that is one thing, which leads to the second thing. Know what has to be, which is like tell people the rules. And two more things that help really overcome differences. One is creating a safe space for people to express their negative emotions and their fears. Usually co-living communities do that by having general assembly meetings, which can be every month or every 2 weeks, in which people just come and, following a certain structure, share how they feel about the community, maybe their pain points, the things that didn't work. And it's really important to create that safe space, because if not, people won't do it by themselves, and it's just going to turn into frustration. And lastly, prepare for the worst, meaning know your emergency procedures. Co-living is a representation of society, and that includes suicide, drug abuse, rape, and other things that unfortunately exist today. Now, being ready for that and knowing how to deal with it will also avoid you a lot of problems and potentially like long-term problems in terms of brands, in terms also of resident and community atmosphere. And so, if there's one thing that I would love to leave you in terms of like how to find alignment between people, a part of what I already shared, which is involve resident, speed up the integration through onboarding, it really be give them a space to also express love and gratitude and desire for each other. And that can be also through community assemblies once a month, letting them know, having a sharing circle where people can express what they want to do with the space, where people can express who they want to say thank you to. That can be like a physical wall in which you have like grateful notes. Create a culture in which people celebrate the positive and in which people are able to express the negative without emotional repercussion. And that is it. It's time to create real communities. I hope this talk inspired you. I highly recommend you to, if you want to go into in-depth, of course, to then get the book, which is going to come out probably in a month, which has been one of the major Co-Liv initiatives, actually. And with that, please enjoy the rest of the summit. And I'm going to give the mic back to the amazing Katharina.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Guy. And you want to join me? Come on, you're here anyway.
Hi.
So why not?
Yes, I can.
So here we are.
Just pretending not to be here.
Yeah. That was really beautiful. And you've quoted something that's very special for me, but I'll tell you a bit more later when we rewatch everything together.
Okay.
So thank you, as usual, for being very inspiring and also for being here with us.